Yeah, and I think one of the things that's going to hopefully be implemented along with the therapy is teaching anyone that goes through the MDMA-assisted therapy protocol, teaching them things like meditation, journaling, and breath work that are going to help you live your new life and maintain and grow into someone that is more aware and mindful.
Hello and welcome to the Mindfulness Experience Podcast. I'm your host, Keith Fiveson. We're an official podcast for the Wonderland Miami 2023 conference as a media partner. Remember to sign up with the Mindfulness 20 code for a 20% discount on the standard registration fee. Today we have an extraordinary guest, Juliana Mercer, the Director of Public Policy for Healing Breakthrough, a nonprofit organization that advocates for the use of MDMA-Assisted Therapy for the treatment of PTSD in veterans. Juliana is a Marine Corps veteran who served in and out of war zones for 16 years. She understands veterans' challenges, including the struggle with PTSD and other mental health issues. Her passion for helping her brothers and sisters in arms led her to Healing Breakthrough, where she now advocates for change and supports the implementation of new treatments that can provide hope to those who are suffering. Juliana is here to teach us about the benefits of being mindful, particularly in relation to veterans' mental health. Hey, Juliana. All right. How are you today? How's it going?
It is going so good, Keith. I'm happy to be here with you.
Well, I'm really glad that you're here, and I'm glad that you're able to make time out of your busy schedule to go ahead and do this podcast to really talk about, your experience as a Marine Corps veteran and how it shaped you and the challenges that you faced, and what led you to really start, as the Director of Public Policy for Healing Breakthrough.
Yeah, I see my military story, my Marine Corps story as unique to me, but also not a unique story because there's so many veterans that have a very similar story of service and coming home and fighting a battle here at home that they weren't expecting to fight. Mm-hmm. So while my story varies and what I experience is different from, the veteran to the left or right of me, I think we all have a collective story of service and difficulty at home, assimilating, difficulty dealing with the issues that maybe we or society weren't prepared for us to be dealing with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's I'm a vet myself, and there's so much trauma in the world, and certainly when you're out there in the field doing the work that you're really brought in to do, it's a very challenging experience because you're experiencing trauma. And how do you bring that back into the world, and how do you go ahead and find the right container to go ahead and, really process it and really deal with it? One of the things I'm very aware of, and we talked about it certainly in the opening, is, PTSD and how it affects veterans, both mentally and physically. Can you explain what PTSD is for folks?
Yeah, so the average American will experience some sort of trauma in their lifetime, and about 50% of Americans experience a trauma so severe that it could potentially lead to PTSD. A smaller percentage, about 10%, actually experience PTSD in their lifetime. Mm-hmm. Veterans have because of our work, we have a higher rate of a potential of experiencing something that's traumatic that will cause PTSD. So PTSD is a reaction to a trauma. I like to explain it in, very simply, like you're just stuck in your fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. So you're stuck in your trauma response when you have PTSD.
Dysregulated. Yeah.
Yes. So that switch is stuck on and you can't turn it off, and things will trigger you. Probably the easiest way to explain it is a firework for a veteran may be triggering because it sounds like an explosion. So something as simple as that, or even just being in crowded rooms. There's very many different ways to experience PTSD. Those that have chronic PTSD can't function in their daily lives. And that's something that many veterans that do experience PTSD experience a prolonged PTSD experience.
So they're really stuck in a loop, that trauma loop, which is, hyperarousal, hypoarousal, hyperarousal, hypoarousal, but not in that window of tolerance, which really allows them to go ahead and function, with the ups and downs,
Yeah. And then when we are trying to confront the PTSD, that trigger that's stuck on doesn't allow you to process or go deep and really get to the root cause of the problem. And that's where the psychedelics are useful, because they're able to help you look at your problem with empathy and love and compassion, as opposed to being stuck in your trauma response and not even being able to confront the problem, because confronting the problem is the trigger.
Yeah, the problem is the problem. And that's problematic. So with the MDMA assisted therapy, what you're saying is that you find that individuals, in this case vets, are able to go ahead and look at their trauma with a different lens, and I call it the reboot, reset, reframe kind of scenario. How did you hear about MDMA assisted therapy, and what makes you think it's unique, if you will, compared to other therapies or other medicines that are out there?
Well, I heard about, not just MDMA, but psychedelic or plant medicine through an organization called Heroic Hearts Project. I left the Marine Corps and got into the veteran nonprofit space.
And I'm also a mental health ambassador for Heroic Hearts, so we're on the same team.
Yes. So you understand the process of community, and what Heroic Hearts Project does is they connect veterans to plant medicine or psychedelic therapy outside of the United States, in countries where it's not illegal. And veterans are seeing healing that they've never been able to achieve through a retreat or a couple of different experiences with plant medicine. And this is something that I'd been looking for. And that something is a solution to post-traumatic stress, a solution to what I call the black hole that veterans fall into. When I got into the veteran nonprofit space, it was after working with our wounded warriors starting in 2006. And it was and still is really frustrating work, because we haven't had a solution. An article was just published in JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association, a couple of weeks ago, and it stated that since 2006 through today, the veteran suicide rate has increased tenfold. And so you can imagine those of us that are living this life, but also trying to find solutions, have been hitting our heads against the wall because nothing works. And the problem is only getting worse. The needle is moving in the wrong direction, regardless of any of our efforts. And so that work made me feel, I knew I had purposeful work, but I got to a point where I no longer had purpose. And because of the work that I was doing in helping veterans and with mental health issues, I knew that I needed help.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I met Jessie Gould with Heroic Hearts Project.
Mm-hmm.
I got to go to my own retreat and have an experience with ayahuasca and subsequently psilocybin, and was able to shed and release almost 20 years of collected trauma and grief of my own, but also of my family, my brothers and sisters, my veterans that I had worked with that were struggling. And I knew that was the solution that I'd been looking for, and that I needed to do everything that I could to get veterans access to it. So fast forward to me understanding the availability of MDMA in the near future. And, the exciting news that just recently came out from the MAPS trials, that MDMA is that MDMA is 67% effective in eliminating a post-traumatic stress diagnosis. And those that don't completely heal have
67%. That's huge. That's absolutely huge. And it's not just like you have to take it every day like an SSRI. It's like 3-4 treatments, right?
Yeah, 1 to 3 treatments, and that's where you get the 67% efficacy. And those that don't completely heal have an 88% reduction in symptoms.
That's absolutely amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is for the trial participants had an average of 14 years of complex chronic PTSD. And if you think about it, that's the average of an OIF, OEF, or Iraq, Afghanistan veteran. We've been at this for an average of 14 years. And so that's the light at the end of the tunnel of looking for solutions. We're hopeful that MDMA is going to get FDA approval mid next year. And our goal is to make sure that the Veterans Administration is set up for success in deploying this treatment modality.
Wow. Well, talk about being able to move the needle and being able to make a change, the kind of change you want to see in the world. I had General Steven Xenakis on the show. I've had him on twice. And of course, one of the things that, he's very passionate about, we both kind of stop for a moment, is really talking about veteran suicide and treatment-resistant depression and the availability of psychedelics. And, certainly we spoke about Jessie Gould, who's doing great work, and the work out of vets as well with Marcus. And, we talked about the fact that we still have to take vets offshore in order to do this work. And, wouldn't it be great to be able to at least, ketamine is available. You can use ketamine, but it's not subsidized through insurance, still through the VHA. So, your view in terms of the legality of MDMA coming up this next year. I know there's some CPT codes that have been assigned for longer sessions. And I'm just wondering if you start looking out a little bit ahead, do you see, the healing process for veterans with PTSD really being assisted through the VHA? What is your view of this? And, what can we do, the people that are listening on the show, what can they do to go ahead and help this process along, perhaps?
Yeah, so the VA is the nation's largest integrated healthcare delivery system. And we really believe that they're best positioned to take MDMA-assisted therapy to scale and lead the way for other healthcare systems to be able to adopt this. If they can roll out MDMA-assisted therapy in their healthcare system, they're going to be an example to other healthcare systems. And I think they're also going to be able to lead the way for other psychedelics that are being studied. Their uptake of this therapy can pave the way for a new class of treatments, and how they choose to roll out MDMA-assisted therapy can dictate the standard of care for treatment and provider training for PTSD treatment within the VA and beyond. And I think that their adaptation is going to impact and
Mm.
change
Mm.
all systems.
Right.
So, I think it might be a very big dream, but I think that this is a really big step in the right direction,
Yeah.
in setting the standard of care for a novel class of treatments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think the veteran voice is very important in this, in that people see veterans as someone that they care about, and they have an obligation to help heal.
Mm-hmm.
We're also, this is such a bipartisan issue.
Mm-hmm.
Healing veteran PTSD is something that's bringing people together on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, Rick Perry opened up the Denver convention. Isn't that wonderful? Yeah.
yes. And actually, one of our top supporters is also from Texas, Pete Sessions. He is very proud to be the
Mm-hmm.
most anti-cannabis
Mm-hmm.
representative, but he looks at this and sees the efficacy. He sees
Mm-hmm.
that there's science behind it, and sees that it's going to start saving veteran lives.
Mm-hmm.
So he's our number one supporter
Mm.
in trying to get federal support for MDMA therapy into the VA. And I think it says a lot that he is very proud to be very anti-cannabis,
Mm-hmm.
but sees this as a solution for veteran mental health, and is behind it 100%.
Wow. Well, I think the horse is out of the gate as far as cannabis is concerned, and it's, in a lot of cases, it's without a saddle, because there is a really strong case for medical cannabis if it's used properly within the right environment. And I think the same thing certainly with MDMA. We could say Molly, ecstasy, is not necessarily a good thing if it's not within a psychedelic assisted therapy environment. So I'm wondering, from your viewpoint, when you start taking a look at it, that mindful play, that mindfulness in terms of bringing veterans with PTSD, what do you think is the difference between, something that is maybe a club drug, Molly, ecstasy, that's now, being researched? I know Rick Doblin was talking about some research that's going on in the VHA. I went and talked to the VHA. They said they couldn't talk. They were under lock and seal, but they are doing research there. And I think the efficacy rates, as you point out, are really high. Is it just the assisted therapy process that really makes the difference? The being held in the container, creating the container, and being able to be seen, heard, and recognized from your viewpoint? Or is it the drug itself?
It's a combination of the drug that allows you to flip that switch of being stuck in PTSD off chemically, and the hard work of the therapy before and after. So the MAPS model is, 4 weeks of therapy, a session in clinic with the medicine, and then 4 weeks of talk therapy after. And that can be repeated as needed. We in this space, we talk about preparation and integration being the most important part of this entire process. And without integration, you run the risk of only having an experience that you will remember in going back, and not without the integration. You're going to have much lower rates of success. I think MDMA is the same as the other psychedelics that we say need preparation and integration. And the integration is the part that allows you to really go deep and get to the root cause of the trauma, and work and sort through it in a way that you're going to be able to hold on to those results and be able to learn how to live your life without that trauma.
Yeah. So when we start taking a look at the being able to live your life, I'm wondering, because there is the preparation, the administration, the integration, and then the activation. I like to talk about it in terms of activation, the being able to bring it out into the world to be the change you really wish to see. I'm wondering your thoughts around, because this is the mindfulness experience, and I'm wondering your thoughts around mindfulness and how that plays a role in the healing process for veterans with PTSD, and how it can really help strengthen the outcomes of other treatments, such as, MDMA-assisted therapy. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's going to hopefully be implemented along with the therapy is teaching anyone that goes through the MDMA assisted therapy protocol, teaching them things like meditation and journaling and different tools like breath work that are going to help you live your new life
Mm-hmm.
and maintain and grow into someone that is more aware and mindful. And I do know that is part of the MDMA assisted protocol by MAPS. And I also know that the plan for the trials that we're hoping get federal support will include discussions around meditation, breath work, and different tools that can help you through the process and beyond.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So this is it's great news. I like hearing that myself. Really focusing on the mind, the body, the breath, the ability to eat right, the ability to rest right, have right relationships, and really the right environment that's conducive of being in the world and not letting the world kind of bring you down. And certainly PTSD can do that. From your view, when you, as an advocate, really working with veterans, what's been the response from policymakers and the general public in general, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, we've met with over 300 policymakers, including every member of the House and Senate Veterans Affairs Committee. And we've been garnering overwhelming support for MDMA-assisted therapy for veterans across the aisle. When I walk into a legislator's office and tell them that 2/3 of trial participants no longer qualify for a PTSD diagnosis, it's hard for them to not hear these facts and become supporters.
Do you have like one side of the aisle saying, well, wait, what about SSRIs? Well, aren't they using SSRIs to deal with trauma or stress or PTSD? Do you have any of that kind of, what's the rebuttal?
Most people are very aware that SSRIs are palliative and they're not moving the needle. Most people are very aware of the veteran suicide epidemic, of the mental health issues that we're facing, and they know that number has not changed no matter what we've thrown at it, and SSRIs are included in that thing of that we've thrown at this problem. So that doesn't really come up. I think most people hear this and they're like, oh, this is going to get people off of SSRIs, off of a lifetime of medication. And they see that this is going to change mental health as we know it. And they also are very aware that this is not something that pharma is going to be excited about, because it is going to get people off of the lifetime of
Well, that was kind of the thing I was kind of looking at and kind of thinking, okay, where's big pharma in all this, and is somebody going to come in and kind of like create a situation or create some sort of a drama or trauma that really kind of poo-poos it, like we saw just say no, the whether or not it's from the Reagan or from the Nixon era, which really, put the whole development and evolution of these medicines into a point of limbo, right?
Yeah, and that is the pushback that we do get. MDMA is known as ecstasy. It is known as a party drug. It was scheduled by the DEA in the 80s. And so the pushback that we do get is the concern that it will proliferate MDMA and illicit substance use. But when we explain that, this therapy is going to happen in clinic, no drug is going to leave the clinic, but also it's saving lives, and it will save lives on a really massive scale. It helps people to be more open to listening. And then when we explain to them that
Mm-hmm.
I lost my train of thought, so hopefully you can edit this out. Edit this
No, it's
podcast.
fine. I think you're totally, we're on track. When you explain to them that the efficacy rates are as high as they are and really understand that it's in a, the therapy, pre and post therapy, and, people are recovering from PTSD, they start to understand,
Yeah, and I think where I was going with that
Mm-hmm.
is when we explain that there is actual science behind
Mm-hmm.
this, and it's not just a party drug that we want access to.
Right.
They're a lot more open. We've changed a lot of minds, and the fact that there
Mm-hmm.
is science and that the clinical trials have been so
Mm-hmm.
successful,
Mm-hmm.
it's been really useful in telling the story of why this is necessary.
Right, right. And let's not forget, I mean, there has always been a fringe and an underground where people are able to go and buy these drugs anyway, for the most part, if they're in pain. The thing we do as human beings is we look to alleviate our pain. As Gabor Mate talks about, trauma is there, but the reason why drugs are there is because they work. So the real question is how do you make them much more effective, and how do you offer them then to the mainstream? So really what you're doing is you're really looking at a way to go ahead and mainstream something that may have had a stigma to it as a party drug or whatever, and really bring it into the mainstream so that individuals can really find help and really find solutions where there was despair or there was anxiety or there was stress before. And I think that's very admirable. And thank you for that work.
Thank you. And I think this is becoming more and more mainstream. We're
Mm-hmm.
having more conversations about this. I think, the veteran voice is opening the door, but,
Mm-hmm.
just last year we had two representatives from both sides of the aisle,
Mm-hmm.
Congressman Lou Correa and Congressman Jack Bergman, who is a
Mm-hmm.
retired three-star Marine Corps general,
Mm-hmm.
started the Congressional Path caucus, or the psychedelic advancing therapies caucus. And
Great.
so there's
Great.
an
Love it.
actual caucus that is
Wow.
focused on these modalities and really
Wow.
focused on
There's a
addressing.
psychedelic caucus in the government, huh? Wow. I
there,
didn't know that. That's very cool.
there is, and both of those congressmen are huge supporters of the work that we're doing to get MDMA-assisted therapy into the VA, and
Mm-hmm.
they actually helped us get language into the MilCon VA bill
Mm.
that looks at breakthrough therapies
Mm-hmm.
and getting those into the VA for veteran
Yeah.
healing.
And MDMA has been classified as a breakthrough therapy. It's in phase 3 trials. The efficacy rates are very high. And then there is that expectation from Rick Doblin that it will be legalized or passed through as a part of MDMA-assisted therapy within the framework this next year. Is that right?
Yes, so they did complete the phase 3 trials, and they're in the process of submitting the paperwork to the FDA for final approval.
Mm-hmm.
And we hope that it happens early to mid next year.
Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be unbelievably great? That really is wonderful. Let me ask you, what advice would you have to give veterans struggling with PTSD in terms of how they can find help or, find support? Do you have a perspective on that?
Yeah, I think any veteran that is struggling and hitting that wall should reach out to organizations like Heroic Hearts Project or
Mm-hmm.
Vets,
Mm-hmm.
and because for now that's the only way to get this type of treatment is
Yeah, and VETS is Veterans Exploring Treatment Solutions, right?
correct.
Okay, good.
Yes. Right now, that's the only way to
Mm-hmm.
access this type of healing in
Mm-hmm.
a safe way. And also start reaching out to your legislators and letting them know that you demand this healing to be available to you here in the country that you fought
Mm-hmm.
for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know that a lot of people coming back, as we said, these medicines really help individuals to cope, to go ahead and be in their life every single day, if possible, one way or another. But I'm wondering the role of families and loved ones and how they can really support veterans from your view in terms of dealing with mental health challenges, how they can contribute really to the healing journey. Do you have a perspective about that as well?
I think the biggest thing that loved ones and family members can do is also work on the collective healing. There's a lot of collected trauma, or there's a term for living with someone with PTSD. It's secondary PTSD, and recognizing that it's not just the veterans' fight, it's everyone's fight, and that we're all affected by it, and we all need to collectively heal from what the veteran experienced. I think is really important, like recognizing that healing needs to happen for everyone, not just the veteran, because for those that have been suffering with that 14 years average complex chronic PTSD, it's not just them that are suffering. And so making sure that we're looking at the family unit as something that needs to be healed together, I think is really important.
Beautiful, beautiful. So creating a safe container within the family through love, acceptance, understanding, but also taking care of yourself. As they say, when the plane goes down, put your oxygen mask on first, seek help, seek support, go ahead and find out what you can do to go ahead and, bring your loved one to the table and really, break bread together, if you will. Not really alienate them or exile them, and it sounds to me, really that, Juliana, that you're doing some wonderful work. And, I'm wondering, when you start taking a look at Healing Breakthrough, what's next for you? And how do you see the future of mental health and the overall treatment of veterans and civilians alike?
Yeah, so I really see our work at Healing Breakthrough as threading the needle on public-private partnerships and really helping to pave the way for these novel treatments to make it outside of the VA medical system. But right now, there's a very heavy lift, and that is ensuring that the VA has the support that they need federally and internally from the top down and the bottom up to effectively roll out MDMA. So I think our focus will be there for quite some time, because it's a very big lift. And I think that, in the future, and hopefully the near future, we'll be able to start looking at other breakthrough therapies, psilocybin it being the other breakthrough therapy that is going through the FDA process and shows that it can be potentially helpful for anxiety, depression, and many other mental health ailments that we suffer from.
Right. And Johns Hopkins has done a beautiful job of doing a lot of research around that, and hopefully we'll see some of that. Well, that's absolutely wonderful work. Thank you very much for doing the work you're doing. And how would people get a hold of you if they want to find out more about you, your work, the organization, and so on? I know you'll be at Wonderland, and we're looking forward to that. But in the meantime, or afterwards, someone listening, how would they find out more?
Yeah, info@healingbreakthrough.org is the best place to go.
Info@healingbreakthrough.org.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, I personally thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule. And I really want to thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Keith. And I look forward to seeing you at Wonderland.
Thank you, Juliana, for sharing your expertise and experiences with us. Clearly, you are deeply committed to supporting and advocating for veterans, and we are grateful for all you do. We hope that our listeners will take away valuable insights and strategies for promoting mindfulness and well-being in their own lives and supporting those around them who may be struggling. Thank you for joining us on the Mindfulness Experience Podcast. Stay tuned for other episodes from speakers at the Wonderland 2023 conference.